Hello everyone! And how are you all doing? Coming back strong and starting 2015 in a high note, I want to talk about a topic I've been meaning to discuss for a long while now. Because no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, we all know that you've secretly cried like an oversensitive girl watching Bridget Jones's Diary. And no matter how stone-hearted you make yourself to be, you just can't seem to escape those pesky human feelings. Now, before I commence listing down these feely-feel moments that really feel feely, some sort of stipulation needs to be mentioned. Obviously, I'm sticking by only games I've played and only one per franchise, as usual. But this time around, I feel obliged to exclude visual novels from this list. Nothing against visual novels, but they'd be just too freaking obvious for this type of list. So, really, no hard feelings, Karawa Shoujo. I still love you.
And Hanako is still best waifu.
Additionally, I'm not going to focus solely on sad moments. I mean, sure, most of my picks will be sad, but there's a wide varying spectrum of emotion that I want to dive into besides sadness. And to finish off, although I've been exposed to games like Lost Odyssey, The Walking Dead, Gears of War, The Last of Us, and so on, I have not played them. So if you were hoping to see any of these down the line, let me be the first one to burst your bubble. In addition, I hope you realize just how freaking hard it was for me to hold back from crying when I was writing and recording all of this. Oh, and needless to say, there's gonna be spoilers aplenty in this one. Now, ladies, gentlemen, and others, please keep your seatbelts on at all times. It is also advised to have a box of tissues next to you, as well as your favorite stuffed plushie in hand, because this all expenses paid, all around field trip is a go. Ah, Okami. Beautiful, beautiful game. Not only does playing Okami feel like watching a moving painting, it also has a very engaging story with some unexpected but great somber moments. In all honesty, the moment from Okami that makes me cry isn't even in the game. Well, what I mean is, it's not in the game in a conventional sense, it is part of the game, just the part no one expects to get emotional over. That moment to me is when you beat the game and the credits start rolling.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, I know. It's just one of those things that I can't put into words. I just can't help but feel a little misty-eyed when I see the credits rolling. After that amazing final battle with Yami, after all the trials and tribulations of the battle and the game itself, after witnessing every major event in the game and having to learn and interact with the inhabitants of Nippon, I can't hold the tears back at how fulfilled I feel by the time the credits start rolling. I think this must be how Zelda fans must feel whenever they complete a Zelda game. There's an overwhelming sense of fulfillment, but also a bittersweet sensation and lingering sadness. The song Resets by Ayaka Hirahara is partially to blame for the waterworks. I get really teary-eyed with the instrumental version of this song very, very easily. And trust me when I say that there's very few songs that make me react this way. So for getting this reaction out of me, it definitely deserves to be on my list. And it only gets worse from here, folks. Oh, the Tales series. Some of the best JRPGs I've ever played came from this amazing franchise. So there's bound to be a lot of candidates for this spot. But you see, the thing that defines Tales games is that the worlds feel easily immersive and detailed, and the characters also get the same treatment, well, for the most part. So it wouldn't be surprising if this next entry came from my favorite Tales game, Tales of the Abyss. And in this game, there is one Ash the Bloody. And Ash is rude, he's an asshole, and in general terms, not a pleasant guy to be around. But I think you too would be like that if you had gone through what he did. When Ash was just a 10-year-old kid, he had everything going for him. He was born to the Von Faber family, one of the most prestigious and noble families in all of Kimlaska. And while still a rich and bratty snot-nosed kid, he genuinely loved and cared for his people and country. And he also was adored by his family, so much so that he actually became the betrothed of Princess Natalia. Life looked pretty promising for this kid, until the game's resident baddie, General Von, kidnapped Ash and experimented on him in order to create a replica of himself to take his position in the Von Faber family. After escaping his captivity and making his way back home, Ash witnessed that he had been replaced, and that the bright life he was destined to have was swept under his feet. Fast forward 7 years later to the game's current events, and Ash has become one of Von's strongest lackeys, the God General Ash the Bloody. But Ash actually operates as a double agent, one who ends up working with our party every so often. And it's in these times where you get to interact with him, to see him in a different light. And while he remains mostly cold and abrasive, there are still small glimmers of his old self shown, mostly whenever Ash is around Natalia, which makes his resentment and hatred towards Luke boil up even more, since to Ash, Luke is just a magically birthed leech who took his name and usurped his life. And all this banter between original and clone comes full circle in Eldront, in the final battle between the two to determine who is the real Luke.
Replica!
A battle which the replica turns out the victor. Oh well, I guess you can't win them all. And after handing Luke the key of Lorelei, Ash stays behind to fight off the incoming Oracle Knights, and that's when tragedy hits. This is one of the few cases where character writing shines through and through. The level of tragedy behind Ash's existence is almost Shakespearean in nature. The boy who once had it all lost everything, so he fell into darkness. But even then, he never really stopped being himself, his true self, the 10-year-old who dreamed of a world with no wars and where no one had to be poor. That was exactly why he betrayed Von, why facing Natalia was so hard for him, and why even though Luke only reminded him of his own painful past, these things only propelled him forward. And at the end, when the dispute was settled, when he finally grew to accept the replica as his own person, and when he could finally reclaim his life and amend his past, Ash's bright new future was once again abruptly taken from him. And here I go again with really well-written characters. And this time around, it's from Wild Arms 5, a game I haven't talked about in a very long time. Sadly, however, I've nothing new to add from the last time I've talked about it. So, as my older viewers can guess from this, yes, I'll be once again talking about Avril Von Fleur in her tear-jerking circumstances. Now here's my attempt at an abridged chronological rundown of this. So we start off 12,000 years in the past, where the world is ruled under the tyrannical rule of the Ice Queen. And due to some undisclosed motives, she had a pair of arms made and entered cryogenic sleep. Now, in the present, she wakes up with no memory of who she was, and now dons the name Avril Von Fleur. And this is where the story truly begins. As the plot unrolls, Avril starts to fall in love with Dean, but forms a strong tie of friendship and sisterly rivalry with Rebecca. Through story events, her Ice Queen and Avril personalities start to clash with one another, and eventually, we take a fantastic voyage into Avril's mind, where she regains control of her body while unlocking her past and future memories. Yes, don't worry, you heard that right. I know it sounds confusing, but I'm about to get there. Jump forward towards the end of the game, after beating Volsung, and the Doomsday device is still going to destroy the world, and Avril is the only one who can stop it. Or rather, she's the only one destined to stop it. And once everything dies down, Avril exits the tower in a very calm and sort of disconnected manner, hands Dean a letter, and the contents of this letter detail everything that happened to her. Apparently, the Doomsday device caused a dimensional turbulence, which is a lot of sci-fi mumbo-jumbo fancy talk for sending one's consciousness back in time, and that is exactly what happened to Avril. The Avril that handed Dean the letter isn't our Avril. She is the Ice Queen from 12,000 years ago. And the letter also entails that the time Avril spent with us is her most cherished treasure, and even though she is doomed to traverse this continuous, never-ending time loop, the only thing that makes the thought of it tolerable was that she'll meet us again, and she'll once again have the opportunity to relive those happy days. If her already cruel fate wasn't bad enough, the real stinger comes after the credits when we see Avril preparing to enter her cryogenic pod, knowing full well she will lose her memories afterwards, and thus maintaining her time loop. And of course, no one can do a list like this without including Zack Fair. Crisis Core might just be the only good thing that came out of the compilation of Final Fantasy VII. And though not perfect, it's still a very solid and good game that drags you in and leaves you devastated and sobbing by the end of it. I consider it a mark of a really good game when you know or when you can tell what's going to happen in future events of the game's plot, and yet it is still so painfully shocking. It leaves you speechless and crying as if you've lost your own dog. And once again, I'm a sucker for characters tied to cruel fates. The pain and tragedy of it all makes for some incredible character fortitude. Anyone who already played Final Fantasy VII by this point knew how this was going to end. And yet, you still grew attached to Zack as a character. Before the inevitable end, there was something that made you forget that. Something that made you think that everything would turn out okay.
Nope.
But even then, the game sets you up for a soul-crushing finale. But Zack doesn't die a puppet of soldier. He dies a hero's death, facing off against endless waves of soldier operatives, in the name of his dreams, his honor, and the will he inherited from Angeal. And at the end, blood-soaked and beaten, he passes on his own will to Cloud. And at that moment, he becomes what he set out to become from the very start, a hero. The only reason why this moment is so low on this list is because of the dubious English voice casting for the death scene. I mean, here's the original Japanese one. And now here's the English one. Dude! Was that Tidus? That voice clip completely destroyed the moment altogether. After this, the whole immersive atmosphere is dead, alongside Zack. And that's why I couldn't put it any higher. This next entry might be in this position because it's still fresh in my memory, but who cares? This is my show. I do what I want. Valkyria Chronicles. Excellent game. Very fun. Very creative. 10 out of 10. Lots of trial and error though. Frustrating as hell if you're going for all the A ranks. Still, a very interesting game nonetheless. One I highly recommend to everyone. And this game is original enough to produce an alternative world similar to our own, where a second world war is also going on. Among the many similarities between events, there so happens to also be a type of people who are discriminated against, the Darkson. Anyways, one of our main squad members is the protagonist's own adopted sister, Isara, who so happens to be a Darkson. Through game events, we see that she and some members of her own squad, namely Rosie, don't get along so well because of Isara's dark-haired, for the lack of a better term, lineage. But as the game progresses, we see that Rosie starts to slowly warm up to her by mid-game, when she witnesses the Empire's remaining forces in Thousand burning down a building full of darks and work laborers. And by the time the Mulberry Shore mission comes along, which is the mission right after Thousand, just when you're done taking back your territory from the enemy, we're treated to a special, tender moment where Rosie sets aside her own prejudices and pride and finally accepts Isara. Man, I gotta tell you, it warms my heart so much to see stuff like this. I mean, it's hard enough to find such an earnest character developing moment that feels this satisfying. Oh yeah, the game just went there. Definitely one of the saddest scenes in Valkyria Chronicles. Isara was always likable from the very beginning because she managed to accomplish so much at a young age. More so when she did so with so much adversity in her life. She was an amazing individual because the discrimination she faced in her life did not make her bitter and resentful. Instead, she had dreams, such as having her kind be accepted and to invent an aircraft to fly with her brother. What made her death so sad and shocking is that Isara had so much going for her. So many talents and outstanding mechanical and engineering skills. Now she'll never reach her dreams. After this point in the game, I was a sobbing mess, especially afterwards at her funeral, where Rosie sings in her memory, something that Isara begged Rosie to do before she died. And just where do you think you're going? This show ain't over yet, bub. At the very end of the game, after beating Maximilian, Welkins and Alicia are separated from the rest of the squad due to random explosions and fires. And just when everything seemed lost, in comes Leon, riding on a finished version of the plane Isara started building for Welkin. And this is just so effing poetic. At the moment of this reveal, coupled with the game's gorgeous orchestral score, I was taken over the edge. Tears were flowing out of my eyes and I really couldn't handle how beautiful everything felt. But then there's the freaking epilogue. When you find out that Alicia and Welkin got together and they had a daughter. And they named her after Welkins' sister, and oh my god, she's just the cutest thing this side of a barrel full of puppies! And sometimes a happy ending is all you need to feel this emotional. I'm sorry. I really can't handle these feels anymore. Just please fade to black or something. Thank you. Oh, you knew this was coming around the corner. If you've stuck around my channel long enough, you know that Persona is my jam. And with the topic du jour, did you really expect anything else from me? I will say that I did consider maybe including Shinjiro's death, since in Persona 3, he was one of the main cast, he was a good friend, and his death packed quite the proverbial emotional punch to it. It would make sense, but Nanako wins this one for the simple fact that she was an innocent that was dragged into circumstances out of her control, and those circumstances ended up costing her her life. And in the end, an innocent's death is much sadder, and it connects with much more impact than someone who knew the consequences of what they were signing up for. Oh, and this moment is here for much more than just being shocking and depressing. This single moment in Persona 4 is the most human moment in the entire game. Because when you're watching this scene, you're feeling what the characters are feeling. You're going through the same motions. There is no avoiding all the tears and the rage, the panic and confusion. And if you still think I'm full of it, need I remind you that this is the very same little girl that looked up to you, who called you her big brother, and still loved you and admired you like one. Not to mention that this is one of, if not the most, pivotal moment in the game, which will determine whether you'll be heading down the good or bad ending. Succumb to your anger and pain, and Nanako will be forever lost. see through the deception, the smoke and mirrors, and she lives to smile again. As you may recall, I happen to be fond of Final Fantasy games. So here's my obligatory Final Fantasy entry. And yes, I know,
But Rusty, you've already picked Crisis Core. What gives, man?
but Crisis Core, although canonical, is still a side game. No matter how canonical a side game is, it is still a side game, and not part of the main franchise. So would you care to guess what moment in Final Fantasy history is in this segment? No, as somber and shocking as that moment is, it's not in here. Yes! Oh no! She was so pure, so innocent, so young. How will I ever go on without her? As you can probably surmise from my reaction, I'm not really the biggest fan of Aerith, nor did I really care all that much when she died. But you're getting warmer.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
As much as I love Final Fantasy X, that scene was pretty dumb. There were so many other good moments for a declaration of love than this. But this is the right game, so if it's not this scene, then which is it, you may be wondering? Well, the moment from Final Fantasy X that makes me cry is actually Yuna's speech right before the credits. And I can tell you're probably reacting right now with something along the lines of,
Rusty, you've been hitting the sauce again, haven't you?
you see these words? Huh? These words right here. The older I get, the more happy and unfortunate events happen in my life, the more these simple words dig deeper into my heart. And of course these correlate to the events of the game and are bittersweet in a sense of, I won't forget the past, but I won't let it drag me down. Instead, we'll build ourselves up from the foundation that was our past. And as I said before, the older I get, the more these words ring true to me. And the easier I cry when I hear them again. I guess the lesson to take from this is, never forget your past, because for better or for worse, you wouldn't be who you are today if not for it. The scars are there to remind us that the past is real after all. And yes, I'm ending this segment paraphrasing Papa fucking Roach. Who here loves Solid Snake? I thought so. The man has gone to hell and back throughout the MGS series, and there's also been plenty of occasions when Kojima made us choke up. Though if there's a character that deserves a break, that's gotta be Otacon. I mean, geez, the poor guy can't seem to find someone to love without having them die on him. Point is, with so many individually memorable and tear-jerking moments, there can only be one to topple all others. And to me, that moment is the end scene from Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. This final scene just pulls at all the right strings, leaving players overflowing with seeping amounts of emotions left unstirred. To have come this far, to have lived, suffered, and fought through so much, and to have it end with Solid Snake ending his own life, only to have Big Boss come out of the blue flying flippin' fucking nowhere to offer some much deserved closure to both Snake and the whole Metal Gear franchise. Metal Gear isn't just a game to me, it's an experience, one you won't soon forget once you've gone through its motions. And at the very end of the legend of Solid Snake, we are rewarded with the heartbreak of completion as Big Boss collapses after offering Snake some final words of reflection, and the two share a cigar as a symbolic gesture of acceptance and forgiveness. And Big Boss dies, leaving Snake contemplating the words of his now deceased father. And just in case you forgot, All of this is happening right on top of the boss's grave. The whole setting, the presentation, the acting is fully complemented with the track Father and Son playing in the background. And with the whole affair tugging at the heartstrings, you're left with tears running down your face, a mournful sentiment, and the inexplicable urge to honor this moment with a military salute. I often think that a truly sad scene, one that could potentially be emotionally scarring, has to completely leave you sobbing, feeling lost, desperately hopeless, and yet bewildered, so that you may bask in all its emotional glory. And though some people may disagree with me, Nier more than achieves in this department. In the world of Nier, you can be taken aback at how terrifying and hopeless everything seemingly is. But within a game with so many somber and downright disturbing moments, the Shadow Lord's castle, in addition to ending D, have some of the most ridiculously depressing scenes that I have ever witnessed. And though to completely understand everything within game context, you'll have to have some prior knowledge from the first Drakengard game, not knowing doesn't really detract from the whole experience. You'll just be left with a whole lot of unanswered questions is all. In Nier, or more specifically in the Shadow Lord's castle, is where all cards are laid down on the table. This is where an unsurmountable amount of exposition rains down upon you. And this information is quite shocking, for you see, as it turns out, Devola and Popola, your peaceful little town's mayor and her drunken bard sister, are actually androids that have been charged with maintaining the status quo and reviving the gestalts every time it's necessary. And who are these German word of unsure pronunciation? Well, to put it bluntly, everyone. Yes, you, your daughter, your companions, every single quote-unquote human being in the game is just a meat vessel that was separated from its soul. Okay, then where the hell are all the fucking souls?
They still live on. You know them as shades. Each shade is a twisted remnant of what was once a human being.
The shades? You mean those black little things I've been killing by the hundreds since the start of this damn game? Oh my god, I'm a monster! And if that wasn't bad enough, you have to fight Devola and Popola. And Emil ends up sacrificing himself so that you can escape a berserk Popola in one of the most heartbreaking scenes I've ever seen. And since Nier is a game with multiple endings, some will arguably be a lot better than others. Though it can be said that every new ending only ups the ante when it comes to the feels and leaving you steadily closer to the point of an emotional breakdown. So you've reached the end. The mean bad villain is defeated. You've single-handedly doomed all of humanity by killing the Shadow Lord. And you get your daughter back, all grown up too. Huzzah! The day is saved! Or is it? If you beat the Shadow Lord once more after getting ending B, Kaine starts to relapse and goes full-on berserk mode on you, unable to contain the shade within her any longer, leading you to the only option of fighting her, which in turn leads to Nier opting from two courses of action to take. The first choice will lead you to kill Kaine, and when you do so, she will reply with a thank you for freeing her from a suffered life, and then you'll be treated to ending C. Choose the other option, however, in possibly the only truly selfless action Nier ever makes. You erase your own existence so that Kaine may live. And it's not enough for you to watch your own character fade away into the blank void. Oh no! To make sure every trace of your life is erased, you stand there as you watch your whole travel journal being wiped clean. And then the game makes you delete your own save file. And when everything is said and done, Yona and Kaine are left alive and well, in a world where you never existed. And as you're left there, jaw-dropped and speechless, you can't help but cry in sheer disbelief and bewildering. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the world of Nier. Bleak, hopeless, tainted, and lost. There's no mistaking that this number one spot is, to me, the most saddening, the most heartbreaking, soul-crushing, and depression-inducing moment in all gaming.
What's wrong with you?
I hear you. This is one of those deceptively cute games that stabs you in the back when you least expect it. So I'll just say this. Don't let the cutesy-wootsy aesthetics fool you. As innocent and cute as Klonoa looks, everyone that's seen its ending can testify that this game is one of the saddest endings to ever be part of a game. In fact, the only thing that's more depressing than the ending is the fact that Namco never developed a new game of this franchise after Klonoa 2. As Klonoa and his best friend in the world, Hupo, you go about the ups and downs of your merry and at oft times not so merry adventure to save the world. And in this adventure, prophecies are revealed, new friends are made, baddies are beaten, realities are shattered and truths are discovered. But the thing that never changes is the friendship between the two main characters. But after the final boss, everything should be fine, right? Happy endings and chocolate Easter eggs for everyone, right? Well, the ending wouldn't be so gut-wrenching if it were like that, now would it? Since Klonoa is a dream traveler with apparent amnesia, and since he's restored the world to order, he has to leave, be it by his own will or otherwise. And I think the rest of the scene speaks for itself. It feels like such a stab in the back when reality falls down and the feels hit you as hard as an 18-wheeler on a collision course with a deer. As I've said before, there's very few pieces of music that make me actually cry due to association with a certain scene. But this music right here, if I so much as hear those first few keystrokes of the piano, I start sobbing uncontrollably. And this cutscene is especially personal, since to me it represents the end of my childhood. At the time when I first played Klonoa, I was 11, I think, and in the 6th grade. And it was also around that time that my grandfather died. And when I finished this game, I cried so much for so long, I didn't even think it was possible. And I don't know if I'm in a morbid mood, but doesn't the whole scene look like death and the stages of grief? When someone you love passes on, initially you can't let go of them. You fight and struggle to hold on to their memory until you have no more strength left. But then, when you finally let go and you start to move on, you come to realize that the times you were together were important, that the memories you hold are important. And ultimately, you're just glad that the person could be a part of your life, just as you were a part of theirs. And this is why this cutscene is at the top of this list. It holds too much significance to put it anywhere else. So sorry about the whole field trip, guys. I promise the next video will be a lot more lively and upbeat rather than depressing. You can be sure of that, I promise. But anyways, I certainly hope that you've enjoyed this video, and please let me know what moments in gaming made you cry. As always, this has been That Rusty Gamer, aka the Red Eye Hound, signing off, till next time. And I really need a drink after this one.
Oh,